Week 9 is here, and so is the college football preview show on Beef Up Front. As always, your host Ryan Coyle, joined alongside Joe Kmetz. 1 week out until we head south to Knoxville, Tennessee. Looking forward to that, and it's looking like it's going to be in the 80s down there on a Saturday in November, which is pretty cool to see. But I tweeted it out. I think it was either earlier today or yesterday. We've had some great college football slates this year. I mean, some really marquee matchups. We had the Georgia Alabama game. We had the Texas Georgia game last week. We had Ohio State Oregon. We've had some really good Saturdays, but I think from full week from Thursday night until Saturday night, ending up with Thursday night starting with Pitt and Syracuse, Saturday night ending up with Cincinnati and Colorado. We just have great game after great game after great game throughout the weekend. Big implications. The marquee matchup, A&M LSU, maybe not the sexiest on paper, but so many fun games this week, and really looking forward to breaking it all down. But how are we, Joe? And welcome back.
Coyle, as always, thank you for having me on. I mean, we just said it right before we started. It doesn't feel right that it's already week 9 of the season. I mean, our 10th show, including week 0. We're right in the middle of that 50-something day stretch of college football. I agree with you 100%. This is a great weekend. And I think this weekend it's been a kind of a jumbled mess, which is awesome. This is one of the more wide open seasons in college football we've had in a while. But this is the weekend you're going to either see some teams start to separate, or it could just get even more jumbled. Like right now, Coyle, we're looking at potentially, depending on the winner of the game we're going to talk about in a minute, maybe 2 G5 teams getting in. There are 2 Big 12 teams still undefeated. The ACC still has a lot of, one loss or no loss teams that are kind of going under the radar. There's a lot of teams right now that if you look, you can say are legitimately still alive for a playoff berth, where, that's the beauty of the expanded playoff now. Whereas, last year at this time, it's like, well, there's 10 teams pretty much that have a shot. Now you're talking 30, maybe even 40 teams that are still alive for a playoff berth. So definitely really chaotic, and we got a lot of great games this weekend, and I'm ready to dive into it.
Yeah, I think if you look at the AP top 25 right now, does Vandy? I guess they still do. I think you can make an argument that every single team in the top 25, you could see them in the playoff. I mean, we won't roll through every team, but if you just look through that list, I think you could make a compelling case that each one of those teams has a legit shot to be in the playoff, and their season's still alive. Like some of these teams would just be kind of playing for pride, or play for a good bowl game. But bowl games have kind of gone out the window. Some of these teams have legit chances to make a major milestone in their program coming up still, and that's why I love this 12-team playoff and what's going to come up with it, and hopefully it delivers. But to recap week 8 real quick, not a great week for me. Under 500, 7-13, 3-3 straight up, 1-5 ATS, 3-3 on the totals. Both of us have struggled on the totals this year, so I think a 500 week on the total is pretty good. 0-1 on my dog of Louisville. I think they wound up losing that game by 7. I had them plus 4.5. That was a great game back and forth. I think that was kind of on the right side of it, where it was a back and forth game. I was expecting it to be that way. I was expecting it to be high scoring. It was just kind of the way it came down at the end. Miami was able to finish on the right side. And then my lock of the week was just absolute disaster of Texas Tech minus 6.5. Baylor goes out and beats them by 30. No one saw that one coming, but we look to bounce back this week. Joe, very good week for you. 12-8, 4-2 straight up, 4-2 against the spread, 4-2 on the over/under. 0-1 on your dog of Purdue. I think you had them 27.5. They wound up losing 35-0. And then 0-1 on your lock of Iowa State. They needed a last-second comeback to just beat UCF. So we struggled in the dog in the lock department this week, but I feel like we've been pretty strong throughout that for the season. So look to bounce back this week. But as always, our 5 games of the week and then our G5 game of the week. And we start with that G5 game of the week on Friday night in the Mountain West. Number 17, Boise State, led by Ashanti, the Heisman favorite right now at 5-1 at UNLV, who is 6-1 at 10:30 kick on CBS Sports Network. Boise State -3, over under 65.5. And I know it's out in Vegas, the time zone and everything, but this game should be at 8 o'clock. Like, this is an awesome game, a chance to have everyone's eyes on UNLV and Boise State. Really give everyone a chance to tune in to watch Ashanti. another miscue, I think, here by the television network show. But what are your thoughts on the Broncos and Rebels this week?
Yeah, cool. This is going to be an awesome game. G5, we have it as our game of the week. It's going to be a fantastic game. It's going to be up there with, I think, one of the better games, not just in G5 this year. I think this game has the potential to be one of the best games of the college football season. I think Boise and UNLV are really good teams. Your first real elimination game in college football, and this is kind of what the 12-team playoff was kind of working towards. We're going to see it coming now too with a lot of these power conference teams, but in the G5 ranks, I mean, loser of this game, most likely eliminated, would need a lot of other chaos to happen within the G5. But I think Boise State, going shifting over to the game now, is going to win this game. I know I was just saying it could be the game of the year. I think they're going to win 38-24. I think they're going to handle UNLV pretty well. I'm going to take a minus. I'm going to take the under. I feel like 65.5 is a lot of points. But ultimately, I'm just taking Ashton Genty right now. I think he'll continue to kind of run through UNLV. I feel like the Rebels, haven't had to see a running back like this. I know they played Syracuse, tough overtime loss. I think UNLV still deserves to be ranked because Syracuse, I think, is also the fact that they're unranked is kind of crazy to me. That loss to Stanford really hurts them. That's another story for another day. But ultimately, I'm just going with Ashton Genty here, kind of running through UNLV. I think this is probably the best team UNLV's played this season, even though they played a bunch of Power 5 teams, which is just a testament to Boise. I think they'll kind of take care of business. And even if it does get close, Coyle, we talk about it a lot during college basketball season. When you have that go-to guy late who can get you a bucket or, in Genty's case, get you a big first down to keep the possession alive, I think that's going to kind of be the big difference here. Boise has that guy they can rely on. So I'm going to go with Boise here to kind of – it'll be a close game. Like I would definitely take maybe UNLV first half money line. Maybe, the spread will probably be 1.5 because it's only a 3-point spread. But I think in the second half, Boise will kind of continue to lean on them and wear down UNLV and pull away with this game.
Yeah, there's a very good chance, or regardless of the outcome of this game, that we see these two meet up again in the Mountain West title game. Boise State is minus 360 to make the title game, and UNLV minus 250. Your next two players, Fresno State at plus 300 and Colorado State at plus 300. So barring some major upsets down the line in the Mountain West, these two teams will probably meet up. But I do think regardless, and I was just talking about this with some other people, but I think regardless of the outcome of that Mountain West title game, I think the loser of this game is out in terms of making the playoff, because I think it's going to be very hard to look at one of these teams, even with having much tougher schedules than like a Liberty. I think if Liberty finds a way to go 13-0, I think they would most likely get in over a 2-loss UNLV or a 2-loss Boise State. Even with Army and Navy, Memphis, maybe all just having one loss, I think one of those squads would probably get in over a 2-loss team from here. So very important, obviously, for the winner of this game to handle their business from here on out and then go win the Mountain West title game as well, because they'll need to win that to get in. Can Ashton Genty continue his tear as you predicted? Was digging up his stats from last year and just kind of comparing them to this year. Last year, he had 1,347 rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns on 220 carries. Like, that's a great season for anyone in college football. This year, he's already up to 1,248 rushing yards, 17 rushing touchdowns on only 126 carries. So about 100 yards off from his rushing yards from last year. Already has 3 more rushing touchdowns and has about 100 less carries. Just an insane tear that he's been on. This is the toughest rush defense, though, he's gonna face. And I know he's faced Oregon, but UNLV, very good rush defense, only allowing 104 rushing yards per game, the 18th best mark in the entire country. Is this the group that can finally slow him down? And when I say slow him down, I'm saying like hold him under 150 and a touchdown. If they do that, you make Boise State throw the ball a little bit more than they're accustomed to. That'll put UNLV in good position. I've been a Rebels backer now for year and a half or so. I'm going to take my boys at home. +3 in this one, I think for sure. But I think I'm going to give them the win. I think Genty is going to have a bad game at some point, and I think this is the scenario to have it. And 150 yards and a touchdown isn't a bad game, but for his standards and what we've seen, that would be his worst kind of performance of the year. So I'm going to go with the Rebels at home. I think that they're the best team equipped to give Genty a battle. I'll go UNLV 31, Boise State 28. UNLV +3, and the under 65.5. All right, we go to Saturday now, Joe. Interested your thoughts on this one. Number 12 Notre Dame at 6-1 will play number 24 Navy at 6-0 up in North Jersey at MetLife. A noon kick on ESPN. I feel like Notre Dame never plays on ESPN, but Notre Dame a 13-point favorite over under 52. You think the Irish are on upset alert?
Yeah, Coyle, definitely think we're on upset alert here. Also, you're right. It's not often that we play on ESPN, obviously, because of the NBC deal. But this is a terrifying game for Notre Dame, a team that hasn't lost since Northern Illinois. But some games, like defensively, they look fine, but the offense still doesn't look good. It still doesn't look smooth. And having to stop the triple option, we hear it all the time. Navy running the wing tee, they pass out of it a lot. They call it the sling tee. This is a great Navy team. They're top 25 for a reason. I'm going to go with Notre Dame here, 21-17, just because talent-wise, you're always going to have that edge over the service academies. But schematically, they look like a different Navy than what we used to see under Niumatalolo. I think that's how you say his name. I always mispronounce his name. But I am going to go with Notre Dame here in a close one. Love Navy +13. I normally like doing my locks of the week outside of these games, but if this wasn't one of our 5 games, I love Navy. I'm going to probably stay away from it just because it involves a team that I root for, and I always lose money betting on or against my teams. But I really love Navy here +13. Love the under as well. And I think Notre Dame is going to need a late drive to survive. And it's going to be one of those things where normally it's America rooting against Notre Dame just because we're Notre Dame. But even more so, America would love to see Notre Dame lose this game and set up a potential this will be one big building block towards a potential Army-Navy American Conference Championship game for the playoffs. So I'm going to go Notre Dame here, unfortunately, though, for everyone else in a close one.
Yeah, I think this game is this kind of college football season in a nutshell. Notre Dame pretty much pronounced dead at the scene in terms of their future going forward, making the playoff after that Northern Illinois loss. With teams like Army and Navy on the schedule, it was just believed that they had no shot at making the playoff with poor resume wins. You looked at Florida State, they were kind of dead at that point already. USC, who knew what you would get out of that? But they didn't really have much to look forward to. But hold up, here we are, Navy at 6-0, Army still undefeated. Notre Dame has potential resume-boosting wins still on their schedule with Navy and Army. So pretty awesome kind of how we've got here. And I definitely think if Notre Dame runs the table that we'll see them in the playoff. A lot at stake, though, in this one, and I think we can probably say an elimination game. Definitely for Notre Dame. Navy remains to be seen, kind of depending on what happens in the other G5 leagues, especially because this isn't a conference loss. But it's a huge chance to make your case, Navy, if you do win this and you win out, you win the conference championship, that you should be that team. Navy, obviously, we know, brings the rushing attack to the table. Notre Dame, a very stout run defensive, 30th against the rush in the country. But this is an attack that they haven't seen yet this year, and it is always tough to prepare for the service academies. Blake Horvath, the quarterback at Navy, is a monster. Has thrown for 888 yards and 10 touchdowns. That might not sound like a lot, but for the quarterback from Navy, it is. And that goes along with 621 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. So he's been one of the better players in college football this year, and it'll be cool to see him get the spotlight on this noon game. He's a playmaker and has a monster chance to make a statement. I'm not going to be bold enough to take Navy for the outright upset, but I do think they give Notre Dame some fits and hang tight in this one. I'll go Notre Dame 27, Navy 23. So I'll go Navy +13 and the under 52. All right, our third game of the week, we go out to Eugene as number 20 Illinois at 6-1 travels to number 1 Oregon, who is 7-0 for a 3:30 kick on CBS. Oregon, a 21-point favorite in this matchup. Over-under is 54.5. Oregon, the new number 1 team in the country, Joe. You think they protect that number and their home turf here?
I do, especially with Illinois coming off a big win against Michigan. And, I know we talked about it last week. Michigan now unranked, but at the time, number 24 in the country. That's a big win for a program like Illinois that is building towards something. Bielema has shown that he has these guys going in the right directions, a lot like his old Wisconsin teams from back in the day. But I'm going to go with Oregon here to win this game by a score of 28-10. I think Illinois will cover the 21 points. I think it's a lot. And also, I think Bielema doesn't get like curb stomped like this. I feel like now that he has kind of his guys in place. Dylan Gabriel, obviously much better quarterback, which we're going to kind of go with here. And, the whole 2 time zone theory, which has been, talked about at length all season. We even saw it with USC going to Maryland and losing. Like, you have these teams going these long distances, they're not used to it. But especially an Oregon team that kind of had their letdown spot. That's why I picked Purdue. I have Kamala Harris that's popping up right now on my ESPN. But you have
Are you voting blue?
No, I'm voting. I don't know if I'll vote either way. I hate them both, actually, but we're not going to talk about politics on this show. I get 20 texts a fucking day from both sides, and my name is either Beth, John. They never call me by my name, and it's like, you have to be a patriot or you have to help beat Trump, and it's just, I hate it so much.
I got a video from Brett Favre yesterday.
Brett Favre.
It didn't tell me who to vote for, but it was a video from Brett Favre saying to go vote.
That's this is always the craziest time. We can't do this. I'm not going to get into political talks right now. Talking about Oregon and Illinois. I'm gonna take Oregon to win the game. I'll take Illinois to cover. I'll take the under as well. I'll pass it over to you, Coyle.
Yeah, side comment real quick, but as we see these matchups more and more in football, I'm starting to get hype about college basketball as well. Like Oregon, Illinois, a conference matchup in college hoops. That's going to be awesome. I don't know how the conference realignment is going to work with basketball with, the more teams. I assume just less teams playing twice, but every team's going to play each other at least once. So there's going to be just great college basketball this year, but that's a story for, only 12 days away now, but yeah, but at the beginning of the weekend, back to this game, I saw this number at 25. It really popped off the page. I think I tweeted it out. It was like BYU was only a 1.5 point favorite at UCF, and Oregon was a 25-point favorite against Illinois. So I'm not surprised to see this number go all the way down to 21 because a lot of people probably had that same kind of thought as I did. I think Illinois is damn good, and I don't think Oregon is some untouchable power that's going to run the table and go undefeated and win it all this year. I think Illinois is certainly good enough to give them a game. I think they're good enough to finish the year with 9 or 10 wins. That defense is legit. I think Brett Bielema is one of the better coaches in the country, one of those guys that does more with less, just like Mark Schmidt up at Bonaventure. But Altemeyer's been playing very well, and they won't be afraid of the moment. This team has played in a lot of big spots already. They went to Nebraska and won, and we're starting to see maybe Nebraska is more of a 7 to 8 win team instead of a 9 or a 10 win team. But still, that's a tough environment to go to. They've already gone to Penn State. They lost that game. But then they beat Michigan. Like, they've played in some big spots already. And just like with Navy, I'm not going to be bold enough to take the outright upset, but I will take Illinois to stay within the number. I think they could definitely keep it within 3 touchdowns. And I think Illinois is much closer to the range of the Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon upper echelon of the Big Ten than Minnesota, Michigan State, this year's Michigan, and kind of that middle to bottom tier. I think Illinois deserves a lot more respect on their name. And how much better is Oregon really than Penn State? Illinois went up to Penn State, lost by 2 touchdowns. I could certainly see the game kind of shaking out like that. But I really like the under in this one. I think both defenses are really good. I'll go with the Ducks to win, but the Illini to cover. I'll go Oregon 27, Illinois 20. So Illinois plus 21 and the under 54.5. All right, the marquee matchup of the week is in the SEC down in College Station at Kyle Field. Number 8 LSU at 6-1 at number 14 Texas A&M 6-1. 7:30 kick on ABC. A&M is a 2.5 point favorite here at home, over under 53.5. And before you get into your pick for this one, Joe, I just think that these two teams deserve a ton of credit for the way that they've bounced back from week 1. A&M with the home loss to Notre Dame. LSU to the loss to USC on the neutral field where they were favored by 4 to 5 points in that one. For the way that they've bounced back, have started the SEC season undefeated, and I think both teams have a very realistic shot. Sorry, the winner of this game has a very, very realistic shot to make it to the SEC title game. For the way that they've bounced back since the beginning of the season to where they are now, I think it's really impressive. But what are your thoughts on this one? You think LSU can go down to College Station and get the win?
Coyle, this is a game I have no clue. This is such a coin flip game for me. I'm picking A&M just because in these situations I just lean the home team. I'm going to go 21-17. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Really love the under here. So what does that tell you? Because besides last week, I've been pretty terrible with my totals kind of for my entire life. But I'll take A&M to cover the 2.5. I mean, Nussmeier's a fucking baller. Don't get me wrong. And LSU is a really explosive, really exciting team. But you got to go into an environment like Kyle Field, which is one of the largest stadiums in the entire country, regardless of sport. That's just a really tough environment to go into. A&M has been rolling ever since that Notre Dame game, Nicole, like you were alluding to. I mean, they really put it together. They've looked a lot more of like a competent team. You know, kind of like I was saying earlier with Oregon, they got their letdown spot out of the way with Mississippi State. That was their trap game. They survived. Now they get to refocus, and you have Brian Kelly coming to town. Whereas LSU still has, you know, Bama coming next week. No, they have the bye week. It's their next game after this. But you still have a massive game for LSU coming up. The bye week, I was going to go on a whole look-ahead thing, but I forgot about the bye week. I'm just kind of going to lean A&M at home here, though. Brian Kelly's an awesome coach. You know, he'll win you a lot of regular season games. I just think this is going to be a real tough spot to keep going. You know, the SEC being a gauntlet, it is so hard week to week with all of these games. So you get LSU went on the road and controlled the game against Arkansas, but this is going to be a whole different animal because A&M is definitely a step up in class. So I'm going to go with A&M in a close one. But it wouldn't shock me to see LSU pull this out. So I'm going to go A&M though.
We're recording this on Wednesday night around 9:45, so the audio version will drop tomorrow. But as of recording this, Joe, right now, Kennesaw State is up 24-17 on Liberty.
I've been following along the whole time when you've been talking because I'm like, that's
with 8 minutes left.
24-point dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think regardless of that now, you can't.
They have to. 30-second side tangent on Liberty. They cannot make the playoff. They are not a good football team. They're 5-0, but if you look at their 5-0, it is like they've been pulling it out of the fire every week against these bad teams. New Mexico State, no offense to Mexico, New Mexico State's 2-5. They went on the road. They were down big, and they came back 130-24. FIU, another team that is not good. They're 2-6. They needed overtime to beat FIU. Like, they have no impressive wins either. That App State game got canceled, which hurts them anyways. Even if they survive this game, I don't know, even if they're 12-0 at the end of the season, how you can look at their body of work and say, yeah, this team deserves to go. It's not like basketball where you can win a lot of close games, but that's kind of just basketball. Like football, if you're not beating these teams, and this is a Liberty team coming off of a New Year's Six appearance last year. They played Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. I was expecting them to kind of run through this conference no problem. I had Caden Salter when we did our QB, like our QB draft, or we listed our top 10 QBs. He was, I think, 10th. Like he was in my top 10. They just haven't looked good. No real impressive wins either. And if even if they win this game, I don't think they would need basically every other G5 champ to have 3 losses and then be undefeated to justify that. But I have to get that off my chest. I cannot stand the fact that Liberty continues to get away with this because I was pulling for them last year, but this year is a different story. I expect them to be so much better, and they've been very disappointing. Probably the most disappointing undefeated team of all time, in my opinion.
Of all time, wow. All right, we go back to the SEC, back to LSU, Texas A&M. As I said at the beginning, both teams have improved week after week, and they're not just sitting in the playoff picture, but the SEC title picture as well. I did a Kmetz and kind of mapped out the path for them, but You look at Bama with 2 losses, Ole Miss with 2 losses, Georgia with a loss, Texas with a loss, and LSU and A&M sitting here undefeated in the SEC. As we talked about at the beginning, their only losses in the non-conference. There's a chance that both of these teams after this game could run the table. You look at A&M. After this, they have South Carolina, host New Mexico State, go to Auburn, and they host Texas. And we saw Texas last week is human. They're definitely beatable. And if Texas A&M is undefeated going into that game in the SEC, why can't they beat Texas in a big-time rivalry game? And then you look at LSU after this. They host Alabama. Alabama is beatable for sure, and it's in Death Valley. They go to Florida. They host Vandy, and they host Oklahoma. So I think they're going to be favored in every game the rest of the way too. The winner of this one is in the driver's seat to go to the SEC title game. LSU is plus 450 right now to win the SEC. That's third, and A&M is plus 500 to win the SEC. That's fourth. If either of those interest you, I think maybe take a stab on that because whoever wins this game, I think that number will probably get cut in half. But with all that being said, I haven't been on the right side of an LSU game, I think, this year. I had South Carolina beating them. I had Ole Miss beating them. I had LSU dominating USC. Just haven't been able to get this right. I had Arkansas last week against LSU. So I bet against LSU, I think, more than I haven't. So I'm going to take them this week on the road. I would probably fade me in that one. But I think this is a close game down to the wire. You said it best. Like, no idea how this game is going to end. But I think if LSU has the ball in their hands at the end, Garrett Nussmeier, I trust him a little bit more than Wegman on the other side for Texas A&M. I think it comes down to the wire, and I think he makes a big play late to get them the win. I'll go LSU 24, A&M 20. So LSU plus 2.5 and under 53.5. I think the under in that game could be, and I forget if you said that or not, but I think the under in that game could be one of the plays of the week. All right. Before we made the our projections and put out the line for this game, it was 13.5 over under 56.5. Bama as a favorite here against Missouri. Since we made the line and put that out, Bama is now up to a 15.5 point favorite, I believe. Drew Pine, it sounds like he's going to start at quarterback for Mizzou, and Brady Cook will be out. So I guess we could just roll with our previous prediction, unless you want to switch up here on the fly, Joe. But number 21 Mizzou, 6-1 at number 15 Alabama, 5-2. Sounds funny to say that, but 3:30 kick on ABC. Any chance Missouri goes down to Tuscaloosa and wins this?
No, I don't think they stand a chance. I'm going with Bama 38, Mizzou 27. So I'll take Mizzou to cover the 13.5. I know Brady Cook is out. I think one of their starting corners is out as well for Missouri. I thought I saw that on Twitter earlier today as well, which might explain, looking at ESPN, I know obviously all the spreads are different, but according to ESPN Bet, Bama's a 16.5 point favorite, which is kind of telling, but I don't know. 16.5 is a lot for this Bama team. They've looked like a completely different team since the second half of that Georgia game kicked off. But I am going to go with Bama here just because, especially now, I trust Milroe at the quarterback position. At the end of the day, if you have a better quarterback and you're at home, and there comes a point in time where if you're Bama, you have to be pissed off and you have to have some pride in the fact that you are Alabama. You have been top dog. I know Saban's gone now, but you have been the top dog. And you're seeing, all week in the media, you're seeing Saban, you're seeing A.J. McCarron bash Alabama football and the state of the program in the locker room and saying all anyone cares about is TikTok, which is just a very funny. I thought that was a Saban quote, and then I saw that was A.J. McCarron. I thought that was even funnier. But there has to be a point where it's going to click, and I think this will be the week, and Bama will get a convincing win over a Missouri team that I think is a little bit overranked. I don't really think – I know they're 6-1, but I really don't think Missouri is as good as we're making them out to be, which is a shame because I thought they were going to be a little bit better this season. But I think Bama's going to win here comfortably. I still think Missouri's going to cover just because Bama just seems to be letting those types of things happen. Like Bama seemed to be the better team in South Carolina. South Carolina almost ends up winning the game. They score that touchdown, get the onside kick. It seems like late in the game, Bama kind of shuts off. They start coasting, and I think that's going to happen again. You'll see Missouri kind of start throwing the ball around late, maybe get a backdoor cover. But I still think Bama is the better team and should win comfortably. But what do I know?
Yeah, I actually was listening to that podcast where A.J. McCarron, it's McCready and Siskey. They're awesome. It's McCready's like an SEC reporter, and Siski used to be on staff at Bama, Ole Miss. It just hits different. It's two Southern white dudes talking SEC football, and they bring on McCarron weekly as well. It's a pretty great listen. But yeah, he was fed up, like, and he didn't mince words about it. So, that kind of ties into my point. Like, in what world, even with Cook out and Drew Pine starting, what world does Bama deserve to be a 13.5-point favorite, let alone a 16.5-point favorite over any SEC team right now? And does this spread just goes to show you how big of a disappointment Missouri is, even though they're still sitting there at 6-1? I would say, and my opinion probably changes depending on Cook's status, but if you think Mizzou wins this game, has any chance to go to Bama and wins, another thing I would recommend to look at is take them to make the playoff at plus 200 as well. Because after this, they host Oklahoma, go to South Carolina, which won't be easy, but then they go to Mississippi State, and they host Arkansas. There is a very clear path for Missouri to finish this year at 11-1 if they find a way to upset Alabama in this game. Just something to consider. I'd say that on the side, but another one where I'm going to side on the side of caution and just take Bama to win at home. Don't see them losing a third game already. I think they're much more likely to lose that third game in a couple weeks at LSU. But if they do lose this game, DeBoer is going to get chased with pitchforks outside of Bryant-Denny Stadium on Saturday evening. He might get fired Sunday morning potentially by the entire board of trustees down there at Bama. But Mizzou needed some heroics last week to beat a terrible Auburn squad. And as we talked about, Brady Cook, the quarterback, sounds like he's going to be out. Just don't see Alabama dropping a third game already. So I'm going to take Mizzou to hang around, keep it within the number. But I'm going to go Alabama 31, Mizzou 27. So Mizzou plus 13.5, over 56.5. If you're actually betting this weekend, that's a game I wouldn't touch at all. Too much unknown for me. All right, our final game of the week before we get into our dog and our lock of the week. Number 5, Texas at 6-1. Awesome to have these guys on the show. Number 25, Vanderbilt at 5-2. A 4:15 kick on the SEC network. Texas, 18.5-point favorite, over under 53.5.
I'm going with Texas big here. I'll keep this quick. I got them winning 45-17. I'm going to take them to cover that 18.5. I'm going to take the over here. This just seems like a game where they're going to be playing pissed off after kind of getting bullied by Georgia. They're going to go and bully Vanderbilt, who, although they've been great this year, they are very well deserving of that number 25 next to their name. I just think this is a case of Texas still is uber talented. And I think if they were to rematch Georgia after that game, it would be way closer than what we saw on Saturday night. And I just think Texas is much better than Vanderbilt. I'll just keep it that. I won't even really dive into it. I think Texas is going to take care of business here. Love Diego Pavia. Love the story down there in Nashville. But I just think Texas is going to be too much for Vandy to handle.
Yeah, great to see a number next to their name. One of the stories of the year in college football for sure. Another team where not quite on the same level as Illinois, but you know that they aren't afraid and they're going to be revved up for this one. And Texas, after last week, that was a gut punch, a kick in the nuts type of game. They could be in a little bit of disarray after last week. Is Quinn still the quarterback? Is Arch going to get some more playing time? What do we make of that situation? And how do we know how Texas is going to bounce back and face some of that adversity? This isn't the spot you want to go to, I think. And it's weird to say that against Vandy, but Vandy's a team that believes that's going to be a sold-out crowd down there. And they have that underdog, we're against the world type of mentality. So I think Vandy can make this a game. I would definitely look to take them like plus the points in the first half. Probably get that around 9.5 or so. I think that they can keep it under double digits in the first half. But there's a lot of questions in this one. What do we see from Texas? How legit is Vandy? I think we'll definitely learn a lot more about these teams after this game. But I think the Commodores are going to kind of keep it close. But I will go Texas to wind up winning at the end of the day. 31-24, Texas wins. Vandy plus 18.5, and the over of 53.5 just hitting there. All right, our last two picks, our lock of the week and our dog of the day. As we said, 0 for 4 combined on these last week. Let's look to flip the fortune in this one. Lock of the week, I'm going to go with Indiana and Washington over 53.5. Hoosiers have the number 1 scoring offense in the country at 48.7 points per game. Washington, no slouch on offense. Will Rogers, he's proven to be able to go out there and put up some points during his college career. I think if Washington can just get you between 14 and 21 points that Indiana can take care of the rest. I know they have a backup quarterback in this week, but he came in last week and still was able to move the ball against a Nebraska defense that going into that game was a damn good unit. So I trust the Hoosiers to do their part, and I think as long as Washington gets between 14 and 21, you'll be able to hit the over 53.5 in this game.
I'm going to go with Minnesota -4. They host Maryland. I alluded to it earlier, talking about USC, losing to Maryland. I just think that was a very emotional comeback win, which, once again, even though USC might not be great, Maryland still beat USC. Like, that's still a big win for the program. You're beating a name brand like USC. I think, you're on an emotional high, emotional roller coaster. Now you got to go to Minnesota. I'm going to take the Gophers here -4. I think they win that game by 2 touchdowns. I think it is going to be a blowout. This is the same Maryland team that got bullied by Northwestern a couple weeks ago as well. So don't let the game against USC kind of distract you from who Maryland really is. I think Minnesota is going to take care of business and win that game, no problem.
Kennesaw State has the ball up a touchdown, 4:30 to go on the Liberty side of the field now. That would be a wild start to the week in college football. Not for many people, but that definitely crosses off another G5 contender. I think teams like Army, Navy, Memphis, UNLV, Boise State are all sitting in their dorm rooms right now clapping for that one. All right, dog of the day for me. I'm going to go with BYU +1.5 against UCF. It could be the square play of the week. The line is screaming UCF, I think, in this situation. You got an undefeated BYU team. But I talked about it with you earlier. They got some stuff going against them, traveling across the country. UCF looked pretty good with the new quarterback in last week against Iowa State. But I'm going to roll with the Cougars here. They need a win to keep their at-large playoff hopes alive and to remain in the driver's seat for that Big 12 championship berth. So they got a pretty legit defense. I think they can slow down the UCF offense a little bit. And I just think they've proven this year. They're a damn good football team. So I'm going to have them overcoming some adversity and that long travel and beating UCF in this one. It's going to be a tough game, but I do like UCF or BYU to win, and I think they could win by at least a touchdown.
Yeah, Coyle, we were texting about that game off camera. I am surprised that they're dogs. I do think UCF is a little bit better than we thought, even though they are 3-4. One big thing I think going against UCF for this game is they were so close to beating a top 10 team in Iowa State. And if you had won that game and then potentially came back and won this game, UCF might all of a sudden be a top 25 team again. But that being said, emotional letdown. I think BYU is going to be able to get the win there. For my dog of the day, I'm going to go with Stanford +3, +124 on the money line. This game makes me want to throw up everywhere picking it. But looking at dogs, this one really stood out to me. You have Wake Forest going across the country. They were just on the road against UConn, who is UConn. They're going to have a good record, but look at you, UConn beat, please. But this is just a really tough spot. You're going all the way out to Stanford. Stanford has shown some sparks. They've shown some signs of life. They did beat Syracuse, who, if Syracuse beats Pitt tomorrow, they're going to be a top 25 team. But this is just a really tough spot for Wake Forest. Back-to-back road games, going from North Carolina to Connecticut, coming home, then you're flying out to California. I just think you're going to kind of have a tired Wake Forest team in a snoozer. It's probably going to be an 80-90% empty stadium. And I think Stanford's going to be able to get the win there. I really like them on the money line as well, but I'll take the +3 for our dog.
Yeah, I really like that play as well. I think we talked about that last week or the week before. It's something that we're going to see more and more and talk about, I think, more and more going forward, these cross-country trips with these conference realignments and potentially taking, home dogs in those spots. So like that play as well. Looks like Liberty is going to go down. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, but Kennesaw State just goes up a field goal. So that definitely eliminates another G5 team from the playoff mix. If they aren't able to come back, that would be Kennesaw State's first ever FBS win as well. And it's a shame you're wearing your Vandals shirt tonight, not your Owl shirt.
Yeah, my Owl shirt's actually in the wash. I wore it to the gym yesterday. But shout out to the Owls, my dynasty team. And it's just very funny how college football works. Like they lose by 11 points to UT Martin, who is an FCS school, and then they come out and beat Liberty, who's undefeated and was receiving votes in the AP poll this week. This is also a Kennesaw State team who their last game out they lost 14-5. Yes, that's a real score to Middle Tennessee State, who's also terrible. They also have lost to Jacksonville State 63-24. And you're going to come
lost a bet in that game, betting on Jacksonville State, believe it or not.
What was that?
I said I lost a bet on that game, betting on Jacksonville State.
Yes, you had the first half, and it was close at the half, and then they rattled off I think 42 in the second half. But
it was 20. It was 21-0 with 6 minutes left, and there was a kick return for a touchdown, a fumble. It was just everything just lost.
Vegas always knows somehow. They always know. But shout out Kennesaw State. 0-2 in Conference USA, 0-6 overall, getting this win here.
Liberty's gonna win. You gotta stop talking. Liberty's gonna go win.
I might go live bet Liberty right now, for being honest. At least to cover the spread. I don't know what it is, but
Pat did make a good point there too.
Yeah.
All right, well, that'll do it for this edition of the College Football Show on Beef Up Front. As always, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk next week.